The story of Albanian settlers in Italy during the 15th and 16th centuries is one of displacement, adaptation, and perseverance. These refugees, known as the Arbëreshë, fled their homeland due to the Ottoman conquest of the Balkans. In their search for safety, thousands of Albanians crossed the Adriatic Sea, eventually settling in southern Italy, where they would build a new life while struggling with language and cultural barriers. Their arrival and eventual integration into Italian society mark a significant chapter in the history of both Albania and Italy, and their unique cultural identity has endured to this day. The migration of Albanians to Italy began in the late 15th century, particularly after the fall of Skanderbeg, the legendary Albanian leader who had resisted Ottoman expansion for over 2 decades. Skanderbeg's death in 1468 left Albania vulnerable to Ottoman conquest, and by the early 16th century, most of the Balkans, including Albania, had fallen under Ottoman control. As the Ottomans expanded their empire, many Albanians faced the choice of converting to Islam, living under Ottoman rule, or fleeing their homeland. A significant portion of the population chose to escape the empire's growing influence, seeking refuge across the Adriatic Sea. Southern Italy, then part of the Kingdom of Naples and the Kingdom of Sicily, became a primary destination for these refugees. Italian rulers saw potential in these Albanian settlers, valuing their military experience and agricultural skills. Many of the Albanians had been involved in guerrilla warfare against the Ottomans, and their presence in southern Italy was seen as beneficial for defending the region from Ottoman raids and incursions. The Albanians established communities throughout Calabria, Sicily, Molise, and parts of Apulia. These regions were sparsely populated and often plagued by poor agricultural yields, so the arrival of the Albanians was seen as a way to rejuvenate the economy. The settlers brought with them their farming techniques and quickly began to cultivate the land, playing a vital role in the development of these regions. In return for their settlement, the Albanians were granted certain privileges, including relative autonomy and the right to maintain their own religious practices. Most of the Albanians were followers of the Byzantine Rite, and while the Italian peninsula was predominantly Roman Catholic, they were allowed to preserve their Orthodox Christian traditions. This was a crucial factor in maintaining their cultural identity. Despite these privileges, the Albanian settlers faced significant challenges. They struggled with language barriers, as their native Albanian tongue was vastly different from the Italian dialects spoken in the region. Cultural differences, particularly in terms of religious customs and social practices, further isolated the Albanians from their Italian neighbors. However, over time, the Arbëreshë began to blend aspects of Italian culture into their own, while still fiercely guarding their distinct identity. One of the key aspects of the Arbëreshë identity was their adherence to the Byzantine Rite and the use of the Albanian language. While many settlers gradually learned the Italian dialects spoken in the region, they continued to speak their native language at home and in their communities. Even today, centuries later, many of the descendants of these settlers still speak Arbëreshë, a dialect of Albanian, as their first language. Religion also played a significant role in maintaining their cultural heritage. Most of the Albanian settlers adhered to Eastern Orthodox Christianity, though they were often affiliated with the Italo-Albanian Byzantine Catholic Church, a unique religious institution that allowed them to practice the Byzantine Rite while remaining in communion with the Pope. This arrangement enabled them to preserve their religious traditions while integrating into the broader Catholic culture of Italy. Despite their efforts to maintain their identity, the Arbëreshë also experienced a gradual process of assimilation. Over the centuries, many of the settlers intermarried with Italians, and their communities became more integrated into the larger Italian society. However, their distinct Albanian identity persisted, and today the Arbëreshë are recognized as a unique ethno-linguistic group within Italy. One of the greatest challenges faced by the Albanian settlers was the language barrier. Italian, with its Romance language roots, was vastly different from Albanian, a language belonging to its own unique branch of the Indo-European family. This linguistic divide made it difficult for the Albanians to communicate with their Italian neighbors and to navigate the legal and administrative systems of their new homeland. In many of the early Albanian settlements, Italian was rarely spoken, and the community relied almost exclusively on Albanian. This helped the settlers preserve their language and culture, but it also slowed their integration into Italian society. Over time, however, the need to interact with local authorities, participate in trade, and build relationships with neighboring Italian communities led to the gradual adoption of Italian, especially among younger generations. The Albanians also faced challenges in integrating their religious practices into a predominantly Catholic society. While they were allowed to maintain their Eastern Christian traditions, there were occasional tensions with the Roman Catholic Church, particularly in terms of church governance and religious authority. These tensions were generally resolved through compromises, but they added another layer of complexity to the settlers' efforts to integrate. Despite these challenges, the Albanian settlers succeeded in creating thriving communities that managed to preserve their cultural identity while contributing to the development of southern Italy. Today, the Arbëreshë are recognized as a distinct minority group within Italy, with around 50 towns and villages in southern Italy still home to Arbëreshë communities. These communities have preserved many aspects of their Albanian heritage, including their language, traditional dress, and Byzantine Rite religious practices. Cultural festivals celebrating Arbëreshë heritage are still held in these communities, where traditional music, dance, and food are central to the celebrations. The Albanian language continues to be taught in schools, and there are efforts to promote the preservation of the Arbëreshë dialect, which has been recognized as a protected minority language by the Italian government. In the modern era, the Arbëreshë face new challenges, particularly in terms of preserving their language and culture in an increasingly globalized world. As younger generations grow up speaking Italian as their first language and with greater access to mainstream Italian culture, there is a risk that the unique identity of the Arbëreshë could fade. However, many within the community are dedicated to maintaining their heritage, and there are ongoing efforts to promote the teaching of the Albanian language and the celebration of Arbëreshë culture,